Hi, everyone, and welcome back to The Things We Know. Today, we are tackling power, why it so often goes sideways, how we can rethink it. We like to think about and talk about power over versus power for versus power with. We're not specifically referencing the Power Code, but this sort of comes out of that as well, and everything we read in the Power Code by Kari K and Claire Shipman. Ultimately, none of us wants to live in a world, well, I think none of us wants to live in a world dominated by force, although I think an argument could be made that that might not totally be true.
Jeez, yeah. It's an alarming thing if you pay attention to communities, families, dynamics and relationships, but also, systems, not just our country, but other countries. So yeah, if you really understand, or if you have your own understanding of power, you know that power over is controlling.
Yeah.
That is a that is a choice. That is a structure. Sometimes people would argue that that's ordained by God, or that it's the best way to keep people safe, or that it's earned. But yeah, power four, on the other hand, is well intentioned. That can slip into saviorism. So,
Yeah.
like, power four is like, feeling like you're stronger than someone else and advocating for them. And in and of itself, I'm not demonizing that. We're not demonizing that. But we'll talk about how that could also slip into ways that aren't helpful. And then
Yep.
there's power with, and that's the collective, and that's the shared lift, which, we talk about all the time. It's like our it's like our mecca, right? If that's even possible. We want to dig into what each of these really feels like and how to bring more of the with into our lives.
Mm. Yeah, wouldn't that be lovely? Okay, so let's start simple. When you think about power over, what comes to mind?
Um, I mean, like, I think of the tropes, like the
Sure.
Miranda, what's her name? Miranda something in Devil Wears Prada.
Oh, yes.
Miranda. Anyway, whatever her name is. Like, I think about tropes, like really controlling bosses. That's the
Yeah.
first thing I think of. Luckily, that's interesting because lately I've been really disturbed by, some archaic, just having read things like The Well-Trained Wife, just,
Yeah.
people believing and like subscribing in these faith communities to this idea that like God is over pastor, pastors over the men. God only speaks through men, and then men are over the wives who are over the children. Like, it's just
My
like a
eyeballs are
total.
about to get stuck in the back of my head from rolling them
Yes.
so hard.
Right. The total hierarchy of like, I'm in charge of you, you're in charge of, and so like when you say that, like, a lot of businesses are set up that way, and
Yep.
a lot of, pyramid screams or screams schemes are set up that way. So I think that's what comes to mind, is like these structures that give people the justification to control someone else.
And it feels like the default in
Mm-hmm.
this world.
Mm-hmm.
The
It's
idea of
definitely
yes.
a capitalism trope for sure, or it's
No,
a necessary part of that structure, it seems.
yeah. Yeah. And then so power over sort of narrows and as you said, almost pyramids it.
Yeah.
Power four is a little more nourishing, right? So the influence to help others, oftentimes in the power code, they were saying that's kind of where women operate from, for the most part, is using their power, using their influence to help others. But yeah, absolutely, I think it carries a risk. It's certainly better than power over most times, but it can slip into saviorism,
Yeah.
patronizing,
I mean,
uh, help not letting somebody make their own mistakes.
before we move on from this, I just want to say, like, the thing that guides all of that and keeps it in place is fear. Use the fear as a
Yes.
driver. Um, and Brene Brown talks about that a lot in Daring Leadership, but it's like power over relies on instilling fear. That's like the
Mm,
military is,
yeah.
set up that way.
Yeah.
And they
And
they they say, like, that's how to have a successful whatever it is, right? Outcome, business, family, whatever, like, person, is to like know
And it
who
is, I
to
mean,
obey.
that's just it, right? And again, if you think about where we are in this country right now, we are the power, the way this regime keeps power is by continuing to put fear of other in our in the forefront, right? Whether it's immigrants or LGBTQ or feminism, right? They make it everything, or Democrats, just in general, right? It's like that fear. If Democrats get in office, your guns are going to be taken. I mean, again, a tale as old as time. Clearly, Democrats have been in office, and there are still guns. That's how power overrules. It's the only way they can rule, because if you don't have fear, then one does want to work with or for. Because if you're kind, that the idea of, again, going back to the power code, one of the reasons women reject power sometimes is that they look at this structure of power over, and they're just like, oh hell no, I don't want to do that.
Right.
I don't want to be
Right.
that. So I mean, I think
Right.
moving into power with or for
It's
is more feminine energy. Let's put
yes,
it
it's
that way.
more nourishing. It's more
Yes,
nourishing, right? And like you said, using your influence to help others carries the risk of being patronizing sometimes. We've seen that in coaching a bunch, where helping
sure.
becomes doing for someone, and that could be disempowering, or it can be a way to abandon yourself. We see that
Totally.
with moms doing that a lot, like just making their whole life being about, especially if they're in an abusive situation, like they are just doing what they can to keep their kids safe.
Yeah. I
That's not
mean,
the same. That's not exactly even power.
no,
It's
no,
just
no.
finding a powerful way to keep someone from being harmed is not the same as having power for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, no question. And then there's power over, for, power with, which Parker J. Palmer talks about like this. Power for authentic leadership is found not in external arrangements, but in the human heart. He emphasizes community and shared leadership. That's really where I want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to be in power with.
When do you feel like you've been in that?
Hmm. Gosh. I think, you know, power with, I mean, I think it's every time I'm at a march, and I look around, and this is as long as I've been doing this. So I'm not just talking about being in LA or in Chicago. I mean, even being at events when I lived in Ohio, and I'd look around. Ohio is a little more white, but, I can look around and see all walks of life, um, with me and my kids and my husband, marching and wanting a better country, or for
Mm,
our country to show up better. Maybe that feels very power with.
mm.
Yeah,
And it's not just a theory or just a pie in the sky idea. They're like, wouldn't that be nice? It is such an interesting thing that we're coming up against still, like our foremothers have fought in, which is this idea that feminism like hates men, wants to dominate men, when it's like, wow, no, we want to be at the table and we don't want to have you control our bodies. Would you want us to control yours? No. But so it's an interesting situation that we're constantly battling. But this, where we put power, where we like give power, where we allow power shows up in families, politics, and relationships. And I hate to
absolutely.
think of it that way. It's not like a zero something, like I have more power right now, but like it's always there. We just don't recognize that. And like what I personally find, which is a bit of a tangent, is I always have more power when I'm like checking in with myself, when I'm checked myself, when I'm
Mm.
doing self-examination, and I'm, aware. Like if I'm not really like grounded in what I'm working on and what's hard for me, like I lose power in any kind of argument I get into, or any sort of thing I'm asking for.
Well, and
So oh,
I
go
would
ahead.
think it when you're resourced too.
Right, right. When I'm resourced, it's just a
Yeah.
better way of saying that. Yes. I think Bell Hooks had a great quote: awakening to love can happen only as we let go of our obsession with power and domination.
Mm.
So I think when you're thinking of relationships, when you really find yourself most powerful is when you like let go of trying to have like, one up on. And I remember there's a coach we used to work with, Rebecca, and she worked with couples. And I remember her saying she would say to these couples that she'd be counseling, like, do you want to win? Does that, then you'd
Mm.
be married to a loser, right? Like, or like, how could you both win together? And wouldn't that be more
Right.
powerful? Like, if you constantly want to be the one who's winning, it means that you want to be with someone who's never winning.
That's such a good point. I can totally hear her. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
So I think like the shift towards love is an invitation to see our lives as connected and not competitive.
Amen. Amen. And then that bell hooks goes on to say there can be no love without justice. And at the heart of justice is truth telling, which is power is rooted and shared in vulnerability and courage. And so
Mm.
again, I think of going to these marches and especially in this calendar year, and especially in LA, these people are coming out um, and marching for a better, as I said, a better a country with better angels, I guess. And that takes a lot of courage when you don't know what could happen in any given day. Quite frankly, I feel like anytime anybody of color walks out the door, they're showing a lot of courage in this day and age. But
Yeah, that's so sad. Devastating.
yeah,
I think it's like one of the things I'm constantly like, what does progressive mean? Like means like let's make
mm,
progress with the more we learn, the
yeah,
more we allow
mm,
every human their, human dignity and their rights. You I think you were quoting Parker Palmer earlier. I like another quote, which is when power is shared and grounded in community, it doesn't diminish anyone. It strengthens us all. And
snaps. Yes,
I
not pie.
I still don't understand why that's threatening. But yeah.
Because power over has been in the hands of white men. Now it is in the hands of white men with a lot of money, and it which is 1% of the population, and God forbid they lose any of that. So that's why it's threatening. That's why we're called communists. That's why we're called socialists, because the idea of shared power in community goes against every fiber of their being. It goes against how they got there.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. I mean, yeah, this really does get into so many things that, would take us into a whole other realm, right? Just like thinking about colonization
Mm.
and not just here and anywhere. Like, why do my dogs pick these times that I'm recording this? Excuse me for that.
I think that
Um,
Ozzy and Mabel are very upset about this.
yes,
Is
they
why
are.
they're
They're
growling.
they're growling at this. Is that it's not just like um artillery power. It's not just like
Right.
force. It's actually the retelling of the story power too,
Mm.
and how to retell
Yeah.
and tell that story. And then when the truth comes out, you need the power back to like turn the story back, right? So
Which
like
is what they're
it's
doing.
yes. So
Taking
it's
away that slavery was bad, taking
well,
away
just
that
book
Christopher
banning is
Columbus.
evidence of that. Like let's have power over the story.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. I just get
No, no,
excited.
no, no. No, me too. I mean, this is, I, I'm just taking all of this in as we're even saying it, and it's just, this trying to go with power with is an uphill battle right now, and it is more important than ever that we lead from this, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so practical, right? Power four is advocacy and support. It's using what we have to lift someone else up. Again, we don't want to slide into saviorism. If we start speaking over people instead of amplifying, and it's interesting because I see this a lot on, I've seen this, I shouldn't say a lot, I've seen this pointed out in Instagram recently of different influencers who are not, who are white, who then take something that a person of color has said and put it forward on their own. I do like to remix things, but I really like to make sure that I'm tagging the person or somehow you know that this is not my content, that I found this important and I'm trying to share it. Um, so yeah, I mean the get check is simple. Whose voice is centered?
Mm,
Whose agency grows? I think when you have white privilege, then it is important to amplify voices of color. Um, and just but yeah, just make sure that it's known that this this content was from a especially a woman of color for sure.
mm, yeah. I mean, I I want to like I'm so stuck on this because it's like obviously it hits us hard, especially in the news every day right now. But you know, when yes, when like what we don't want is to like be all about how bad it feels for the person who's learning it now, right? Like
Right.
so like at I don't know how to say this eloquently, so I'll just try. Like it's like as you're learning, as like this is one thing, this is like one of the things from even like the Catholic faith from my background that I really really like. And I don't, there's a lot of reasons why confession is kind of weird and problematic, but this whole examination of conscience as a
Mm.
person is so important for communities, it's so important for families, it's so important for nations. Some have tried, you know, and they never get it totally right, but like truth and reconciliation allows people to not like, it isn't so simple as saying we're bad, they're better and we should make room for them. No, it's about saying we can, the more we know better, the more we can do better, which is something we recorded recently. But when it starts to be all about like how I feel and identify with this, it completely takes all the energy away from what's important. And which is basically what you were saying. It's like,
Yeah, white tears.
yeah, helping and then centering yourself are two
Yeah,
different things. And also they may not need help. Maybe they just need the platform and then hand them the
totally.
mic.
Yeah,
I want to
absolutely.
what I was thinking about too when the like this is totally different, but like in our retreats, when I think about this idea of power, because a lot of people who are, you know, in this on the cusp of a new chapter in their life, or they're like kind of stuck between in that liminal space we've talked about, which is like where I've been for years, where I'm comfortable, and something I'm being called into next that's very uncomfortable, or actually I don't even know what's next. I'd like to come up with something that excites me, right? Whatever that is, we help women shift from I have to do it all, like power over themselves, toward I am held, which is power with peers. So it's like slightly different. It's not, maybe in some cases, sometimes after a bad relationship or a job where they were not treated well, sometimes it is like, whew, I'm not under someone else's thumb anymore. I can think of one person who's gone through that right now, like that. But in general, it's like they're usually going from like, it's all on my shoulders. And so to have this shift in a retreat setting, but to like take that home to their life is like, oh, I don't have to do this alone. There's way, I can tap into way more power and energy if I lean on others. And that is also like what we're talking about. We're not just talking about as a community, see everyone the same. That's important, but also don't isolate yourself. Community can share the power and the responsibility with you.
Yeah, and sometimes, especially at our retreats, I mean, our women are coming from all over the place. I think one of the things I love is that I always say you're walking away with 20 new friends from all over the country, but that the time they spend together with us is feeling seen and heard. These actual women may not be able to physically support once they leave the retreat, but they know that women do support each other, and then they go back to their homes and they ask for that help. That again, that shift from uh, rescuing to partnering, right, is where freedom and liberation live. You know, so it's just a feeling seen and heard.
Mm,
It's what it comes down to, quite frankly.
yeah. So at this juncture, like, how does one, if someone's listening to us, because I obviously I kind of took us all over the map there, but like, how does somebody say that sounds good? How do I choose power with in my everyday
Mm.
life? How do I look for that? How do I tap into that?
I love the idea of just, I mean, again, we're coaches, so we live by the question, but it's like, okay, you can tell a friend is feeling overwhelmed or buried or living in the space of, I just got to do it all. A simple, what do you need? How can I support you? Is there anything I can help you? Can we decide something together? If you're in your household and you're talking to your kids, instead of, and I mean, this all goes back to lighthouse versus lifeboat, right? How lovely is it that we have so many episodes we could just start quoting ourselves? It's instead of going in and rescuing, instead of
Yeah.
trying to go in and be the lifeboat, how can you be the lighthouse for them? How can you
Yeah.
walk with them instead of move out of the way? I'll just do it.
There's I'm having like a humorous realization that there's one place where I like exert my power over and I don't try to have power with, and that is sometimes it's deciding what we're eating. if I'm if
Oh,
I'm the one who's
sure.
doing that, I'm like, I'm choosing. I'm not even asking you guys. Even if I'm getting takeout, I will just make a decision. And they're all pretty grateful in the end for it. But like I could have been like, what does everyone like, do this democracy thing, which takes a long time.
Oh,
And it
I mean,
reminds
I
me of
can't
my
even
dad
imagine.
saying, this is not a democracy. So I will say there are moments where me doing that in the end, they're grateful. But yeah, I guess I just admitting I don't always tap
But I
into collective.
and I guess like anything else, that's okay, right?
Yeah.
Because not every time, if we did everything by democracy, you're right, some
Yeah.
things would never get done, right? I mean, you say food, I think about us trying to figure out what to watch on television.
Yeah.
It's like, and sometimes Darren just puts something on. And
Yeah.
and we've got this new thing now where like let's give it the 15-minute test. If we at the end of 15 minutes, if we don't like it, we'll stop. Oftentimes we
Yeah.
keep watching, or he just puts something on, and Charlotte and I just sit there like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know that the power with all the time. I do think there are times where any one of these, power for or power over, I mean, I wouldn't say ordering food is power over, but I think, there's a
Mm.
space for all of it. The problem is power over is so dominant in our society. It started to fade a little. We got a little bit of power with, and now it's come back, reared its ugly
Yeah.
head.
And I mean, it's really groomed into, a
Yeah.
lot of faith communities, a lot of families, a lot of like the way, not just military, but military and corporations are set up. Like you want to be the boss, you want to be in
Yeah.
charge, you want to make your way to the top. I mean, there's just all the expressions of like that's like the way up is gives you the more power. And yeah, we're feeling it. I'm so like in civic life, building movements, not magnifying lone leaders, not having blind loyalty, but like working in collective, power with is practice. It's not just a concept.
I mean, I'm noticing that like something like I keep calling it 50501, but it's 5051 movement. Like I think
Mm.
that's a beautiful example. I was at with Charlotte, I was at the John Lewis Make Good Trouble uh, tribute or whatever in June or July. And I went up to sign up for 5051 and it was like, do you have a mailing list? No, we don't. Like you could just tell the way they were running, at least the SoCal version of it. I assume it's like this, that's probably directed from the top, but it's sort of like, this is everybody in, there's no like, we're gonna tell you what to do. It's like, it was it felt very community oriented,
Mm. Yeah.
and that's just the thing. I mean, a good leadership, in my opinion, is not just charisma, but it is the courage to create space for others. That is power with. Again, in the examples in the power code, the women that they were talking to, and there were women who were heads of corporations, they were heads of, they were in power in countries in Africa. I mean, just there was just a plethora because I always love that. They go out and just do all walks of life. Um, the women who created that space for power with were very successful.
Yeah.
And men who were used to power over, when they saw how this looks and how it works and how it actually does serve everyone. No one, it's
Right.
not pie again. Um, they got on board. We
Right.
just we just need to open the space for that in more areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, can we go back just because I didn't want to gloss over it by switching so quickly to the retreat. Like let's go back to power four as advocacy, just because it's so important right now before we kind of move into the rest. I just think it's essential in this moment because as much as we don't want to slip into saviorism, that's important. There is like I think life-saving opportunities right now, literally life-saving and freedom, like rights-saving opportunities for people who have just a little bit more power
Yep.
by virtue of gender or skin color or income, where you can speak for people who aren't at the table. I mean, I think our whole electorate system is so messed up, but like that's where like our representatives ideally use their power for. They represent people, right? Who don't. So it's like those of us who are carrying white privilege, using it on purpose to protect people who are being targeted or silenced is where this does apply. Where does your status, your position, your gender, your voice help others?
I agree. And again, advocacy doesn't mean grabbing the spotlight. It means asking others, how can I help? How can I support? Or even being the person, and I'm just a big fan of it being invisible, right? Like in
Mm,
between sessions, a friend of ours reached out to me and was like, hey, can you, this is urgent. Can you send this out? It's some advocacy
mhm.
here in LA. That makes me feel good that she just knows she can reach out to me and I will do it. That I've become, that she knows that's the type of person. I don't have to announce it to anyone. I've been having some conversations recently online with friends, nice conversations about, you know, I don't see this of rich people and I don't see this of celebrities. And I'm like, a lot of these people do it behind the scenes and we never know. That's the
Yeah.
beautiful part of doing
Yeah.
advocacy. It doesn't have to be
Always.
all out there in the all
I
the
always want
time.
to say that when I see people just trolling people who are trying to educate people. And yeah,
Yep,
like it's like, do not assume because you see what they do online that you know what they're doing.
a million
I
percent.
I would be, like you wouldn't have a clue what I care about from that. I mean, I guess you'd know I care about my kids, but but I just think there's I mean, it just can be as simple as just making sure people get heard. It can be
Yep.
just as simple as making sure, like, who's not being heard from in this meeting, who's not,
Yes.
who should we invite, whose voice do we need to hear here. I always love that story of Abby Wambach being at, in fact, this just happened recently too. There's a more recent example, but to finish that, Abby Wambach being asked with like some, high accolade, like, trophy winning athletes. And so there was, like Heisman winners and MVPs and, all these people from different sports, but she was the only woman at the table.
Mm.
And they asked like, how is the experience for women in sports? And men started to answer. And she was like, that's so interesting. This just happened with an Italian reporter.
Yep.
Um, it was Andrew
It was Andrew Garfield, Julia Roberts,
Garfield.
and Io Adibri.
Thank you. And they asked the two white actors, what do you think is going on in Hollywood with the Me Too movement and Black Lives Matter? Is it over? And I was like, did you mean to not ask me that? So
Well,
it's
and
an
Andrew shifted
interesting,
his because Me Too and Black Lives, like he's neither of those things.
right?
And so he just like physically turned his whole body to Julia and Io.
Yeah,
And yeah,
it
I
was fascinating.
unbelievable.
So it's just this power four. If Io hadn't been sitting there, I would hope one or both of them would have been like, you should ask this question of any of these amazing Black actors or, people in this industry that have worked on this film, not us. That I think is just constant, this opportunity to say that, I have this to say, but you really need to hear directly from the people you're deciding for.
I also think, going back to the men answering the question about what it's like for women in sports, um, the other piece of it is if you are in a space where you see a woman or a person of color say something, it's dismissed and then picked up by a white person, stopping and being like, that sounds really familiar. That sounds just like what she said or what that person, that the idea of bropriating, right? Where
Mm,
they whatever a woman says falls on deaf ears, but then the man says it again in the same meeting, and oh my God, it's amazing. It takes some courage to point it out, but we have to not be silent when what we say is being resaid by a person, a white person or a man, like they just thought of it,
mhm,
and I remember I talked about this a long time ago in a different book that I read, and I was talking about on the things I know. And I had a friend from college who's like, oh my God, I was just in a meeting like that this week where I said something and nobody answered, but then the man said the exact same thing back, and they were just like, oh my God, that's amazing. So
mm,
you think it doesn't it happens, it happens on a daily
right.
basis. So when you see injustices happening,
Mhm.
you have to call it out.
Yeah, I love that. It's not my phrase, but I love the nothing about us without us
Hmm.
saying. That's just a reminder that like don't be deciding things and um passing laws without hearing from the people it affects the most. That's
I
power
mean,
for.
Trump trying to send the National Guard into Chicago, and Chicago's like, bitch, we don't need you here. Like, come on. And they did, and they stood up and they said, we don't need you here, and he didn't send them. I
Yet.
mean,
I have yeah,
yet. I mean,
yet.
I don't know when
Knock
this is
on.
coming out. He might
Yeah.
have sent them by the time this comes out. But I
Yeah.
mean, that was, you have to advocate for yourself as well.
Mm,
Absolutely.
yeah. Okay. So there's a bonus one that I added in here. I don't know if you knew I was going to do this. I forgot to tell you, but I don't know why it just came to me, but like it's an angle we almost left out. I mean, this is seriously something I was joking about. Like, can't call it power bottom, but it is like power from behind, quiet power, maybe is a better way to say it. But what I
Yeah.
really mean is power, like behind the scenes power. And I think
Yeah.
it came to me because, like, as we were talking about these things as a projector, you know, when Amy was talking about me saying like the projectors are the newest kind of leadership. They lead very quietly from behind. They are whispering in people's ears, like, this is like how you step forward, or they're seeing, like, as people come to them, they're guiding them forward. Um, so anyway, that comes to mind just as parents, right? Like
Yeah.
the kind of ways that we are supporting is powerful. Like if it really is elevating what they're doing, there is some power in quietly supporting others. What do you think of that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't love the idea of the woman behind the man, um, necessarily,
Did I say
although
that? Or
no,
if I
you
said that, I
didn't, but
didn't. Oh, okay.
that's where, no, no, no. But that's where I go. Although it's funny that I say that because I have often been in leadership roles behind the leader. And I actually kind of love that place. I love that place of being the sort of the whisperer in the ear and not being the front person. And not because I don't want to take responsibility, but it just, I don't know, there I actually feel like that's a very powerful space. I was in a job pre having kids where I worked for a VP, and I really felt like and it was a man, and I really did feel like I was the power behind what he was doing, because I was coordinating everything behind the scenes, and he was just going out and glad handling. But I kind of loved it. I kind of loved it because I was like, yeah, you go do all that bullshit. I'm just gonna be back here quietly making things happen.
Yeah. It's I know it's never like the most it's never the most like it's never the best example, but I always loved what Chris Rock in that one tour he did to help pay for his divorce, which I felt was like a apology tour where Tambourine, where he's like, you know, being in a relationship is like sometimes you're the lead singer, the lead vocalist or lead guitarist, and sometimes you just got to play the tambourine. Like, but it's part of it, right? It's like the supportive background piece that gives power to the whole
Yeah,
sound. So,
absolutely. And I think it's and as as parents, I think that's a really, really important place to be. To for your kids, especially as they get older and move out or on in their life, if they know that they have the power and the support of their parents behind them, and we don't overtake them, and let them have their own voice, it becomes very powerful. Again, it gives them an opportunity to make their own mistakes, to learn their own way, but to always know they have a safe space to land in. We were
Beautifully
kind of
said.
talking about this
Love
the
that.
other day when we were in our little group meeting together with some
Hmm.
other
Yes.
coaches, the idea of having a safe space to land.
Yes. The head of my kids' K through 8 school always used to talk about the scaffolding of peers and
Love that.
community that like that really, supports and launches your child. Um, I love that. The scaffolding we create that so our clients can climb
Hmm.
into their own strength. That's quiet power. You don't take credit for it because they're doing all the work, but the whatever you call it, it is power, like the power to believe in you so that you can
Hmm.
succeed at whatever you're doing is definitely powerful.
Yeah. It was hard to find a song for this
Mhm.
because nothing really interestingly, nothing sort of speaks to power. Well, the song I'm going to choose, which I didn't tell you, I have to go with "Power to the People" with John Lennon and Yoko
Mm,
Ono.
love
I mean,
it.
I guess that's as close as we get to power with. There's not a lot of. I'm not going to quote it because it's pretty much just "Power to the People." But I was playing as I was trying to figure out what song I was playing it, and I just let it go because goddamn, talk about a fire up song, especially when it comes to advocacy. Um, and maybe therein lies the my end thought around all this to some extent, which is I think because power over is so ingrained in all of us, especially in the States or maybe even in the Western Hemisphere, I don't know. Um, we tend to think we don't have power sometimes. When people say, but what does it matter if I vote? It doesn't matter anyways, people why should I call or write my senators? They're not paying attention. All the other little bits of advocacy we've talked about over the years. Um, you actually have quite a bit of power. It may not always feel like it. Right now, it doesn't feel like it. I get that, but don't let go of it just because you can't get the instant gratification of it. So I think "Power to the People" is probably a great song for this
Well, I'm
episode.
gonna just like I'm gonna begin the wrap up by sounding like a old hippie.
Yay! I love old
Which
hippies.
is, bell hooks saying like we do not have to love, we choose to love. Like I think love is power. I really do. I
Mm,
think it's a choice when you're feeling really combative to like what is the most loving response to how I'm feeling right now, what's the most loving response to myself and to the people I feel are in opposition to what I'm caring about. And it's like how I can't think of anything more powerful than that. I feel like we're really, really far from that.
yep.
Um, so a lot of the wisest people that you and I both, look to. And by the way, like I think you get a lot of power with information and you get information by reading multiple sources and not just one that always agrees with you. Read things you don't agree with. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. But
Mm,
power is knowledge is power, education
yeah.
is power, and anyone can educate themselves. But I do think we're so far from that. So a lot of the wisest people remind us like go local, go in your
Yeah.
house and your neighbors, your street, your floor, your community, and there's way more you have in common when you choose love and you support each other, and that's powerful.
Yeah. I love it. The idea of putting our energy, um, putting our energy where power multiplies, right? So I'm not always going to listen to voices that I know there's no power to multiply. I'm going to lean into the voices and the spaces, where community and transformation can happen for sure.
And I would just say, I would just urge you and I would invite you and ask you to share this episode with anyone for whom power with, or maybe even quiet power, might feel like a radical invitation.
Mm,
If there's somebody you struggle with on like around power in any situation, or if you feel like they're just not finding power in their own lives, maybe this is a helpful thing for them to hear.
I love it. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week.
Bye.